So, I saw Tenet.
Tennis. Last time it was no tennis.
Just right off the bat, I want to say that I don't think this is Nolan's best movie, but I don't think it's his worst. This movie is in no way bad, but I do hate to love it. There's so much about this movie that's absolutely mediocre and at times downright bad. I really shouldn't like this movie, but I do. Tenet has so many flaws. The characters have no backstory and we know nothing about the characters. They're just given to us and we're told to form a connection without any substance. The audio mixing is absolutely horrible. It's been corroborated by many people that it's nearly impossible to understand at times. The story is complicated and convoluted and at points sometimes just downright incomprehensible. Despite all of this, I still loved and enjoyed Tenet, not as much as say The Dark Knight. Before I delve into why this movie both sucks and doesn't suck, I'm going to talk about the definite good, the stuff I really liked. Ludwig Göransson's music was amazing. His score is absolutely amazing as always. I think his work is phenomenal and Tenet is no exception. In fact, Tenet is some of his best work that stands alongside The Mandalorian, and Black Panther. It has this amazing atmospheric feeling to it, and hearing it on the IMAX speakers is truly something. The cinematography was consistently great. The establishing shots and inversion shots were truly breathtaking. I definitely say this is one of Nolan's most atmospheric and grand movies. It has the wide open shots of Dunkirk at times, and the close, fast-paced action shots of Inception. The action in this movie was also really great. I'd just like to point out how much of an improvement Nolan has made with his action. If you look at the action scenes in Batman Begins, it's alright. It feels clunky. When you look at his action in The Dark Knight, it's a leap. Then you see the action in Inception, and that's an even larger leap in both choreography and set-piece action along with cinematography and the way he films it. To me, Tenet feels like the epitome of everything Nolan has learned in his career, and I can firmly say this is some of the best flowing action of any Nolan film. And the inverse fights, while short, are very sweet. The inverse scenes are truly something to behold. They're grand and they're fun. The fights never feel dragged out and they're evenly sprinkled through the movie. The set pieces were great too, and they complemented the action perfectly. The setting of the final fight, however, was kind of bland, but it still gave me the sense of grandeur and open space that it was supposed to give. That concludes the definite positives. Now we move on to the negatives, or the things that I feel mixed on. Something that 100% sucked and was completely unpleasant was the sound mixing. Characters while wearing masks were fully incomprehensible, and things that should have been super easy to hear actually took effort for me to try and hear every word they were saying. This is possibly some of the worst sound mixing in Hollywood to date, if I'm perfectly honest. I cannot remember a movie where I struggled to catch some pieces of conversation. This really sucks because for some people, without the exposition, the entire movie is just a mess and falls apart. For me though, personally, I felt that catching bits and pieces of exposition was good enough for me to form a coherent idea and understand the full plot of the story. After reading what the plot was about to double check if I had missed any plot points, due to the horrendous sound mixing, I found out I only missed like one small plot thread because I couldn't hear anything they were saying in the dinner scene. The character writing is really hard for me to talk about. We know nothing about these characters. Backstories are never established until the literal closing minutes of the movie.
Tenet is an espionage story. It's a classic spy story.
But then again, it's really hard to forge a connection to a character you know nothing about. I have more to say about this, but I can't really say it without getting into spoilers. The story in general is also quite a gray area to me. The story was really predictable to me, and I saw all the twists coming a mile away. But Nolan does these twists in such a way that it's still satisfying, even if you predicted it. I never found myself going, "Wow, I saw that coming." It was more like, "Oh wow, I was right." This may be the Nolan shill in me talking, but I found the twist satisfying due to the way Nolan conveys it. This again is another point that I understand about. If you told me you didn't like the movie because you saw the twist coming a mile away, it would make sense. It's not unreasonable to exclaim that the movie is predictable and boring, but it's just not something I personally felt. The last thing I want to say before we get into spoiler territory is that the rules to me aren't defined. The rules of the movie was always loose, and it kind of lost me because I felt like anything could just be expositioned away without any risk. But despite all its flaws, Tenet has enough stuff to like to give this one a watch, especially in IMAX. The cinematography and set pieces look great in IMAX. I'd give Tenet a 7.5, maybe an 8 out of 10. I'm very much on the edge about this movie and have yet to fully decide whether I really like it or I just like it. Now, to get into spoilers, everything I said before about the bad character writing, the bad audio mixing, and the predictability should make me hate this movie. I really shouldn't like this movie, but I do. Even though Neil and the protagonist's relationship isn't well written out, the sheer chemistry Robert Pattinson and John David Washington have made me buy that they were friends. The final part where it's revealed that Neil and the protagonist have been friends all along still hit because while their friendship wasn't solid, you can still buy that they were friends. While we know nothing of the protagonist, Nolan still does a good job to plot out what he is, what he believes in, what his personality is like. He's not necessarily an empty character, but he has no motivation. We don't know why he does things. We don't know why he's the good guy, but we know what he stands for and how he acts. The ending, however, is great. I love how it loops back, and it's really just Nolan ending. However, the ending raises so many plot holes and concerns. If Sator is killed in the past, how can the events of Tenet happen? Now, it may be like the type of time travel in Endgame, or he can change the past without affecting the future. But if that's so, then why does Neil have to go back to die? Can he then theoretically live without needing to go back to save the protagonist, since he already saved him without affecting the future? The rules are very loose and not defined, but I guess like they say in Tenet,
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
while I understand and get what Nolan is trying to do, you can't have a movie that's incomprehensible and deflects all criticism by saying it's not meant to be understood. But in the end, I understood what Nolan was going for enough to semi-excuse it and move on. Because while I definitely didn't understand Tenet at points, I most definitely felt it the entire way through. The pacing of the movie is terrific with action spread out around. While I may have not understood anything about the algorithm or any of the other nonsense, I felt the atmosphere of the movie seep into my mind. My favorite scene in Tenet is when the protagonist gets inverted for the first time and walks out seeing the world go backwards. The atmosphere of that scene and the establishment of that scene was phenomenal. I really felt that world and I really could feel like I had a grasp of what it would be like as Nolan gives us every small detail, showing how the puddles would work backwards, how the birds and the air move back, even the part where the fire gives the protagonist hypothermia because the fire is moving backwards into ice. It's absolutely amazing. The detail and thought put into every scene, it's some of the best world building to date. But like with everything Tenet, every good also has a bad. The sound mixing is absolutely horrendous. Either I wouldn't be able to hear anything and miss exposition, or the audio would be so loud it'd make my ears bleed. The movie at times was so loud I had to cover my ears for 10 minutes as literally the smallest thing would blast out of the speakers at decibels so high I would damage my eardrums. Yet despite all that, despite all the flaws and things I should hate about this movie, I love it. It feels like a movie I really shouldn't like, but I still like it, flaws and all. I still felt connected to the characters, and even though we were told nothing about them despite the movie not making sense at times, the movie was so motivating and captivating with its visuals. I felt satisfied just feeling the movie.
I certainly can't claim to have understood it, but I'm not sure I understand it now. But
Does the film need to be understood?
I don't think it does, and I think that 2001 is one of those rare instances where it doesn't need to be understood, it needs to be felt, and you just need to have this great experience.
Tenet is a movie I should dislike or even downright hate, but I can't bring myself to dislike it because it's so captivating and feels so unique and special, and I hate to love it.
Tennis. Last time it was no tennis.
Or I may really just be Nolan shilling. This entire video is me shilling Nolan despite understanding why this movie sucks. I may be Nolan shilling denial. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. I'm so sorry for not uploading more. I really should upload more, but if you like this video, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and checking out my other videos. Thank you so much for watching.